This episode of Untold Stories is sponsored by ParaSwap. You'll hear more about them later on in this episode. What is up, everyone? I am Charlie Shrem, and you are listening and watching Untold Stories, where twice a week together we get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders, Bitcoin's brilliant people, those who really understand where we came from, where we are right now, and where we're going. Because if we can truly understand all of that, hey, we can trade off that, we can make money off that, we can create more financial sovereignty for ourselves and our families. I mean, I was just thinking this morning, actually, where would I be without Bitcoin in the last 10 years, in the last decade? Bitcoin and the larger crypto economy has given my family, but also millions of others, economic and financial independence. Well, today I'm very excited. We're going to talk to an awesome guy, lives down here in Florida with me, and hopefully we get to meet up soon. Eric Weiss. Eric, thank you for so much for coming on Untold Stories today.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey man, it's great because when Florida people come on the show, their backgrounds are real. Where it's like
Yeah,
when so
it's not like it's not one of those you know, green screen drops.
I had oh, I forgot his name. I had the CEO of Uphold on the show, and he had in the background, it was like a rancher. It was a beautiful, like, covered porch with wood and beautiful timber, high definition, lit. It was like
Yeah.
lighted. He had cows walking in the background. I'm like, dude, that's where did you get that screensaver? He said, Charlie, no, I'm in Argentina. This is real. It was
Yeah,
so
I
cool.
had the same thing. I did a call with a potential investor in Singapore, and he was sitting outside at his house, and there were literally like monkeys crawling around all over the place. I was so preoccupied with the monkeys. I kept bringing him up. He kept trying to ask questions about Bitcoin. I'm like, yeah, but dude, like, look at the monkey right there. It was funny, yeah. But we have good backgrounds here.
Yeah,
Nice place to live, Florida.
it recently has become, over the last 5 years, it seems like Florida is the place where you can not only talk about what we're doing, but it's there's a full understanding of it. And I think that the way that it was, if you talk to the older generation, they're very libertarian, but not by name. Like if you talk to, you
Hmm.
know, Democrat or Republican across the spectrum in Florida, I've noticed it doesn't matter where they fall. A lot of times it comes to like social and progressive issues, but when it comes to money and long-term economics, I've noticed the people down here, because they've had to build their own net worth, they've had to like build it and then they move down here to be able to enjoy that quality of life. They understand how important it is to protect that. Whereas a lot of people who don't have anything yet, we don't make the decisions now to protect ourselves in the future. And so that's why I actually ask people to listen to Untold Stories to get involved in Bitcoin and crypto. And today we'll talk about a lot of those subjects. I just want to give a brief bio. Eric, you had the team at the Blockchain Investment Group, the Big Fund. BIG is it's very well known in our industry. Your background is very uniquely suited to have like evaluating these investments and hedge funds with a focus on blockchain assets. Prior to forming Big, you had a career as a bond trader, technology venture capitalist, an entrepreneur. You started your career as a bond trader at Morgan Stanley, earned your MBA at Columbia Business School, and you were the director of private equity and venture capital at GE Capital, eventually working at ICG when you were making some investments over there. So you've been around the block
Oh,
when it comes to private
yeah,
equity and venture capital. You fully understand like where what we're doing actually fits into the larger picture of like where the world is going. And I kind of want to go down that road and talk about that a little bit. But what I
sure.
didn't know was actually you were the person who orange pilled Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor buys Bitcoin every freaking week. MicroStrategy. I want to know what you said. I want to know how all that conversation came to be, because when I saw that, I remember saying to myself, who talked to him? What was it, Roger Ver? Because that's Roger was the one who used to go out and so tell us all how it all came to be.
Sure. So Michael is one of my closest friends. We've been friends for more than 20 years, and we talk about lots of investment related stuff, technology related stuff. As the world now knows, Michael is incredibly intelligent. I've like yourself, I've met a lot of smart people in my life, but Michael is, by far the most intelligent person I've met. Um, and I got into Bitcoin. I bought my first Bitcoin in December 2013, um,
Oh wow.
after attending a conference, a Bitcoin conference, coincidentally down here in Miami. I wasn't living here at the time.
Was I at
And
that conference?
yeah, I think you were
That's
actually.
probably that's insane. Awesome.
Yeah, I think you were. And it was like those were the days when everybody had a T-shirt on that, like walking around with like "I'll help you set up your wallet" kind of thing was like the big thing. And so yeah, I kind of got into it then, and it's only now that I realize clearly why it was so appealing to me. As you kind of mentioned at the top, like I had a little bit of a career in internet venture capital. Really wasn't technology; it was more just internet related VC. And the internet was really good for transmitting data around the world. And when I saw Bitcoin, it was the first time that I saw that you could transmit value. And I didn't really like I knew there was something special because those were the days when people were petrified to put their credit card into a browser or something. It's just we knew that the internet wasn't secure, and this was like a secure way to transmit value where party A didn't need to know party B. But anyway, back to Sailor. So when I started mentioning Bitcoin around Mike, it wasn't something that he was supportive of. He kind of told me in some pretty strong language that I should really question what I'm doing.
Oh wow.
And this had a fairly nefarious reputation, and I'd had a long career in finance, and was I sure that I wanted to go down this path? And I kept mentioning it, and I kept bringing it up as he's said in some podcasts that he's done. And then during quarantine, we were spending a lot of time together. Couldn't really do much. His home is a little more comfortable than mine, so we'd hang out at his place and sit by the pool and talk about what was going on in the world. Talk about the Fed going bonkers, printing money. Talk about how shutting the world down, and the impact that was
Yeah, it's
going to have on the
crazy.
economy. And we talked about how that was impacting our investment theses and what we should do with our personal investments. And I started talking about Bitcoin again, and I think due to the fact that we were kind of scratching our heads and frustrated with the government going crazy, printing stimulus, that for the first time he was really receptive. And instead of politely moving on to the next topic, he said something like, um, "Tell me more about this Bitcoin stuff." And for the next couple days, we talked a lot about Bitcoin. I guess it only took a couple days to get all of the knowledge in my brain sucked out on Bitcoin. And then he was like, very politely, like, "I'm done with you." Like, what? Point me where else can I learn more about this? And then he really we continue to talk about it every day, but on his own, he really like did a really deep dive, went down the rabbit hole, and it wasn't long before um, he knew much more than I did. And then we got him into Bitcoin.
Do you think the pandemic just accelerated what governments were planning to do kind of anyways, but it just happened a lot faster?
I don't think so. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think governments are incredibly inept,
Yeah,
and
people don't realize that
coordination.
too.
Yeah.
There's no coordination. There's no person
There's
sitting in a
no
room.
coordinate. Like, yeah, I just think they're not capable of doing the stuff they want to do. I mean, to think that there's some kind of grand plan that can transcend, one political party to
Yeah,
another and one administration to another, I think is, unlikely in my opinion.
but we were going on this like path towards anti-globalization during the uh like in the early 2000s. I felt like we were going towards this like just get people on planes traveling, borders are going away, the internet is bringing about this massive globalization, but then it like reversed in a very right-wing negative fashion. So I was trying to figure out, now we're in these years in the 2020s, I feel like the governments were going more towards regulating the internet and regulating and controlling the places where we can talk freely or transmit freely. And
Hmm.
really, the question I wanted to ask you earlier is why wasn't the internet actually built for money?
It's a good question. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think that technology's got a way of evolving that kind of like it's not unlike Bitcoin. You put it out there, and people kind of take it in the direction they want. It seems like the internet really grew out of. I mean, there's a reason that CES takes place at the same time as the AVN Awards in Las Vegas, right? I
Yeah, by
mean,
the way, I've been to
streaming.
both at the same time. Yeah, that's why I was at a booth at CES for my electronics company, and then I actually
Yeah,
went to the AVN Awards in a previous life, so there you go.
right, but that's what drives technology. I mean, that
It's
drove a
true.
lot of internet
Oh my
adoption.
god, you're
For
right.
better or worse, streaming video got driven because of pornography. That's what
Yep.
people wanted, and I think like the money piece came when people were like, "Well, how do we charge for the porn?" And like it was a big driver. So I think these things, kind of spiral out of control in a good way more quickly. And hopefully that's what happens with Bitcoin as well. And I think we're starting to see that.
There's a great film called Middlemen, where it's about two guy, and it's so perfect how two characters in a film can perfectly encapsulate why money over the internet was not a thing, and then it quickly became the thing that made the internet become so big that people needed personal computers. And that was two guys who invented for pornography businesses a way to take credit cards over the internet. And it was literally like manually entering them in through like a phone type of system. Everyone
Yeah,
has to watch the movie. There will be or needs to be like a Bitcoin movie similar to that, that perfectly encapsulates that. But you're right,
middlemen.
100%.
I'm writing down middlemen.
Oh my god,
All
it's
right,
so good.
got it.
It's actually uh what's Luke Owen. I think it's the Luke Wilson doesn't
Yeah,
get enough credit for being an awesome actor. And just because he's like Owen Wilson's brother, I think,
yeah, I'll check it out.
or whatever. Luke Wilson doesn't he's a great actor. It's a great movie. It perfectly explains, to everyone. But I'm curious to know. So you and Michael have been friends for years. Um, before Bitcoin, how
Mhm,
would you guys, I guess, war game or talk about or think about or even physically hedge your
mhm.
life net worth for the future pre Bitcoin? What would you do?
Yeah. So Michael wrote a book called Mobile Wave. I don't know if you
No,
read
I
it
need
or
to read
heard
it.
of it, but basically, at the time, it read when he wrote it. It read a little bit like almost like fantasy future prediction of what the mobile phone, mobile apps, how they were going to dematerialize everything that we do in our lives and how we were going to live our lives on our phones and all this mobile wave as it's aptly titled was going to come to fruition, right? And now it reads like a history book. So Michael has an uncanny ability to not only see how technology is going to impact our lives in the future, and I think he specifically has a gift for,
Wow, this book is
um,
amazing.
yeah, it's amazing.
He has a
But
gift for
he
what?
really has a gift for technology networks and how they're going to evolve and impact us. Which, if you really think about it, that's what Apple and Google and social media and all that they're big technology networks, and he views Bitcoin through the same lens as a money technology network. If you were going to own a network, the one you'd want to own is the money network, right?
Yeah.
Not the one that corrals your photos. I mean, think about how hard it is to switch away from your iOS. It's a lot harder to switch away from your money, right? So, he applied the same lens to this, and that's what we used to talk about was kind of this mobile wave. And I remember in like 2008 or something, we were hanging out when he explained to me at great length that Apple had already won, and I didn't get that at all. And he explained it. And the analogy, as the world now knows, he's pretty good at coming up with these awesome analogies right off the cuff. And he said something like, yeah, Android may have 80% of the devices in the world, but 80% of the money in the world is on the 20% of the devices that Apple has. And developers are going to develop for iOS and Apple And, in his words, the die is already cast and Apple has won. And as a result, we were like investors in Apple. And that's kind of what we talked about, and how these things came to be. And Bitcoin kind of happened in a similar fashion. The only difference on the Bitcoin front is, 99% of the time, he's the one, kind of being the catalyst for the conversation.
Of
And on this
course.
one, I kind of brought up Bitcoin because I found it a little earlier.
It's such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing. And I love kind of how all of our thoughts and beliefs end up falling together. Doesn't matter like that background we come from. Um, so here Michael is in buying Bitcoin, buying the dip, constantly adding it to the balance sheet. A dozen, maybe more, of publicly traded companies, including one that I'm an investor in, Voyager. Invest Voyager is also has
Nice.
tons of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. How so I've released an episode today called "The Paving the Path to Decentralization." It's actually my personal view with Mike Collier from Foundry, who's a big Bitcoin, one of the biggest Bitcoin miners. It's our view on like how we rationalize our own ideology, but also, being capitalists, we want to make money too, and where Bitcoin falls into the larger crypto kind of sphere that we're in now. And we believe that all coins and tokens, projects, platforms, protocols, blockchains all fall on like some sort of spectrum of decentralization. Bitcoin being the farthest one along. Bitcoin is the only sovereign money, is the only fully decentralized money, probably is the only blockchain. I have to check the numbers, but probably the only blockchain that there's no financial incentive, that the 51% attack and all the attack vectors cost just egregious amounts of money that it's almost impossible to do. But there no one realizes that their blockchain's getting attacked every single day. Like you can go on
Mhm.
websites, you can look at them. It's like a constant battle and a war. No one thinks Everyone thinks that everything is like all hunky dory all the time.
Yeah.
So what's your view, Michael's view? I'm not sure if it's together, so maybe if it's different, you guys can separate it. But here he is
Yeah.
buying Bitcoin, but you have the blockchain investment group. What's your thesis? How do you
So Michael, I won't speak for Michael. Michael is a Bitcoin maximalist for sure. So I think decentralization is, in many cases, a critical feature for a lot of things. And in other cases, I think that decentralization um, is just not that important, right? Um, Centralization is more efficient, decentralization more inefficient, and decentralization is really good for safety, security, things like money. But for other technologies, centralization is beneficial, in my opinion. And the way I view it, and this is not in any way speaking for Michael, this is just my view, is that I view Bitcoin and all the other digital asset projects completely differently. So I think Bitcoin is a safe haven store of value, um, digital property, digital gold. And I view the rest of the universe as equity venture capital in this new exciting digital asset space. I don't think they're evil. I think that there's going to be great wealth created in that area, but they're not going after what I feel Bitcoin has already won. And Bitcoin may be simple and it may be boring to some, but I think if people were to look at the space that Bitcoin is
Yeah.
going after, they'd realize like, it's going to replace $100 trillion of sovereign debt. It's going to replace, $100 trillion of, you know, currency to a degree. Um, there's no reason for the two sides to be fighting or at such odds. I don't think they hurt each other's value
Yeah,
propositions.
I agree. I agree with that completely. Sovereign debt is very specific. So every time El Salvador is buying Bitcoin, they're not buying American debt. Think about that for a
Yeah.
second. So
Yeah,
yeah, right?
that's I mean that's
That's
like
the future for Bitcoin. I mean, you said it right there. If other countries follow the same
that's my
standard,
big fear. That's my big fear. I hope we
why?
don't get anywhere near there that soon.
Why is that a
Uh
fear? Isn't that like a good end game for Bitcoin? I mean, what's the worst case, best case scenario for you?
I try to just be positive, Charlie.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure out
No,
why
I think
that would be a bad
I
thing.
I am I am I am optimistic. I am positive. The majority of my net worth is in Bitcoin. Like, I couldn't be more bullish, right? Uh, that said, I think that governments are not powerless, and that they can impair our progress.
Yes.
And I think that if there were to ever come a day when governments could not issue debt to fund their countries because people were putting all their money in Bitcoin, that would bring out, you know, the most aggressive form of government that we can envision.
You see
And
confiscation of Bitcoin. You'd see confiscation of Bitcoin. That's what you'd see. Same thing would happen with gold. When we couldn't issue
yeah,
debt off of gold anymore, we confiscated all the gold because all were buying it as a hedge against it's going to happen again.
I understand the libertarian mantras of like, it's unconfiscatable, they can't take it, there's nothing they can do, we're outside the system. I think that's a little naive. Government can be very effective in how they um, make your life miserable and get what they want if they can get if they're threatened enough. I mean, I do think that Bitcoin
It's
is
not
not a
fun to
currency.
it's not
Yeah,
fun to war game this because it's scary. Like
it is.
I think that idea of like a total crypto anarchy or, like anarcho capitalism, I don't know if that's for me. I don't know if I want to live in a world with full anarchy. I like my local government. I'm friends with all my
Yeah,
commissioners, my mayor here. I'm gonna have coffee with him later. Like they're all great people. Civic duty is important. I don't know why civic duty became this like anti democratic thing to like be a representative for your friends and family and your loved ones for the better good of the society that you live in. It makes no sense. I think it just got corrupted and people are
I agree
tired.
with you. I think that, so my hope for Bitcoin is that we're perceived as digital property, digital gold. And I like the digital gold analogy because gold sucks.
Yeah.
It's been dead for a long time. It doesn't perform. It offers no utility whatsoever. And it's got roughly $11 trillion, $10 trillion worth of value. And I think if Bitcoin is positioned as a digital gold and digital property, that it's not threatening to governments, and it gives us a runway to get to 5, $10 trillion, and at 250,000 or 500,000 per Bitcoin, I think different things start to happen. At that point, you've got lots of direct and indirect stakeholders. Pretty much every member of Congress is going to have some of their wealth in Bitcoin at that point. Pension funds, endowment funds, holders in publicly traded companies, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, we've got real representation at all levels of government. I mean, at that point, we could even have a president of the United States that holds Bitcoin, right? So um, I would like to fight these battles when we get to that stage.
Sorry to interrupt your regularly scheduled programming, but I wanted to tell you guys that if you're using PancakeSwap, Uniswap, DYDX, SushiSwap, you're doing it wrong. You need to be using ParaSwap because ParaSwap is a user interface, a decentralized smart contract platform that sits on top of all of these. And when you go to ParaSwap or untoldstories.link/ParaSwap, because they're refunding your gas, if you go there, then you'll be able to, on top of Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, and Polygon, look for the best prices for your tokens and swap and do everything in one predefined transaction on chain instead of having to do the approval to this token, to that token, to do all these different things. ParaSwap does it all for you. It's decentralized. They just released their API version 5 that you can see everything. It's all open source. Very cool stuff. Untoldstories.link/ParaSwap. If you're using any of the other decentralized protocols, you're doing it wrong because you need to be using the routing, beautiful ParaSwap routing system, and it's fully decentralized too. It's gorgeous. I'll talk to you guys soon. I like that. I like that. I've never thought about that before as companies start to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets and businesses earn income on it. Other hedge funds and other funds of funds will be investing in those. And most of Congress invests in things.
They
It's
like to make
exactly right.
money.
I never thought about that. I've never, I honestly, uh, that is brilliant. That's going to become a
Thanks.
snippet, the 2-minute snippet right there. You must do podcasts a lot because that's actually really great.
This is my second one. So
Um, how do high net worth individuals invest differently than the average person? I don't know where I personally fit in, but I'm trying to like, a very wealthy person told me that if you think like a wealthy person, invest like a wealthy person, you'll become wealthy. So how do wealthy people invest differently than you and I? Like diversifying assets. There's all these. I'm learning that they're very smart in owning assets.
Michael's
Yeah.
pretty wealthy, and he is not diversified. So I would say that
Oh my god.
diversification is, Michael likes to say that diversification is selling the winners to buy the losers. That said, a lot of the investors that I deal with are um, a little older. They're kind of boomers plus, and their general perception is, hey, this Bitcoin and digital asset and blockchain stuff is a thing. I know that I want exposure to it. I don't fully understand it. I'm not comfortable putting all my money in it, but my kids and my grandkids and whoever are yelling at me, and I turn on the TV and look at the newspaper, and all I see is Bitcoin, and I feel like I need to be involved here somewhere. They don't want to know about private keys. They don't want to know about, a hardware device, and all of that is just very unappealing to most of them. And what they want is a way to invest in a space that is safe and secure and feels like what they've been doing their whole lives. That's why I started, my fund Bitcoin investment group, where we custody at Fidelity Digital Assets. People pay 1% a year. That's it. It's for high net worth individuals and institutions. I just buy and hold Bitcoin for them. It's that simple. And they get a monthly statement from us, and they get a K1 at the end of the year that they give their accountant. And if they ever want their Bitcoin, we'll send them Bitcoin to a wallet address, if they want to exit and that's how they want to leave, or we'll convert it back to US dollars for them. And it's just a very nice direct way for them to hold Bitcoin.
You know, it's not only that, it's not only a direct, and we could talk about, I'm curious to know like what these kind of structured debt products could look like, but if borrowing against your Bitcoin is definitely very simple nowadays.
Yep.
Actually, one of my sponsors, Ledin.io, we're giving away $50 in Bitcoin to anyone who opens up their first loan. If they go to, I'm going to plug untoldstories.link/LEDN. Great way. You put your deposit your Bitcoin. There's a custodial relationship there,
Mhm.
and then you can borrow against it. The problem is it's still very new, Bitcoin lending, and even how it all works and the relationship between the me and then whoever's custodializing it, it's not fully vetted yet. In fact, that's what the SEC is actually trying to figure out right now with stable
Right.
coins. Like, what's that relationship? So what you do is you actually give people a way to, for if someone, let's just say they have $1 million worth of Bitcoin at the fund, they could theoretically go and take that and borrow against it to buy a house in traditional structured product methods.
Yeah, I guess they could. They could show their assets to a bank, and the bank, they might haircut their Bitcoin substantially. Also, Fidelity Digital Assets does offer borrowing against your Bitcoin directly. It's not something that we extend through the fund. Um, I think it's a great thing. Borrowing against your Bitcoin is a hell of a lot better than selling your Bitcoin. Um, and I advocate for borrowing against it as opposed to selling it. That said, it's not something that we offer directly through the
Sure.
fund, but you could show it as part of your assets and borrow against it. Yeah, I think I made a mistake. The Bitcoin that I bought in December of 2013, I sold. Um, and I still don't have as much Bitcoin as I sold at that time.
Oh my God, neither do
And
I. Gee, I'll never own that much Bitcoin I've owned over the years, ever.
that makes me feel a lot better
Oh
because
my
you're the
God.
ultimate OG. So
I struggle with it. I have a certain amount and I'm like, just that's, it's just never gonna change. Like I
Never.
constantly buy a little bit, but
Yep,
it's a
me
different
too.
world now. I know, but the thing is, I think you really only need to own 0.01337 Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin is a
That's the
million dollars,
number.
that's 0.01337.
My
But
guess is you have a little more than that.
it's a little bit. Well, you want to have actually one bit. I used to say five Bitcoin, but I think it's one. I've been reading a lot. I've been reading a lot of Hal Finney and Satoshi's writings a lot lately. I do it every year. Just read them all. I read a lot of the writings that I've had in my because 10 years ago when I got involved in Bitcoin, I was a lot more like uh free speaking of my thoughts and beliefs. Probably would put me in jail. But I definitely like try to understand things a lot better in today's world.
Yeah, I'm with. I mean, look, those lessons that we learned, while painful, are invaluable. I think it should say something to anyone watching that you and I genuinely will never sell any of the Bitcoin that we own. We're
No,
only trying to get more. And I mean, I know. Look, I know there are a lot of people with Bitcoin out there that probably have less Bitcoin than you and I, and I still wake up feeling uneasy that I don't have enough, not for greed purposes, just for like unpredictability,
yeah,
inflation purposes. Like I want enough money to be able to live my life. And it scares the hell out of me that the price of apparel could go up by 15% in 1 year. I mean, I could give a shit about what I wear, obviously, but
sure.
the point is like in 1 year, you can devalue my money by like more than 15%. Like I'd like to be around for a couple more years. It could disappear pretty quickly. What's enough?
For the Bitcoin network to succeed, where like you're talking about the $5 trillion number, even higher, take over that money supply, the M1. I think Hal wrote that Bitcoin would need to be at a $1 million price per Bitcoin. And to me, if Bitcoin doesn't hit $1 million in my lifetime, then I've considered it a failed project.
I use the same verbiage all the time, and people get very mad at me when I say stuff like that.
It's an
Um,
experiment.
that's the
It's a
exact word I
social
use.
experiment.
I still think we're in the experiment stage. Um, and that implies risk, right? And a lot of people don't like to hear that there's any potential risk here. Um, but there is, right? I mean, we're half the size of Google. Bitcoin is half the size of Google right now. We're decentralized and you can't shut it off and all that, but we are vulnerable and we are not where we need to be yet. And I agree with you. I think if we don't see $1 million in my lifetime, it will have not gone the way that I
Yeah.
hoped and expected.
Speaking of our lifetimes, I'm a little bit nervous because people who never previously talked about money before, I'm hearing the words like hyperinflation. And I know it's we're so far away from that. However, in our lifetimes, we've seen other countries, first world, Argentina, no problem, go through
Yep.
this year over year over year, and they accept it.
Venezuela. Yeah.
Venezuela, but I'm talking about like a country where you can go and travel and stay in a nice hotel. Like you're not doing that in Venezuela right now, but Argentina is a seemingly. I actually went there with my wife. It's a great place. Buenos Aires is
Awesome.
amazing. La BitConf, amazing, one of the first Bitcoin conferences every year in Argentina. Well, now they moved to Uruguay and they move around Chile, I think too. What is this hype? When do we, 15% a year
Yeah.
apparel? That seems kind of hyper to me. What is real hyperinflation, and is it something that we should be worried about?
I think Well, yes, it is something we should be worried about. I think nobody really knows how it unfolds, because the analogy I like to use is the U.S. is still like the best house in a bad neighborhood, right? So,
That's
what
good. I like that.
happens to the best house in a bad neighborhood? As the entire neighborhood goes downhill, does that best house continue to kind of hold its value, or does it bleed value too? And I think what happens is it starts to bleed value when there's an alternative. Bitcoin is really a different neighborhood. Um, and so, yeah, there are those of us in first world countries for whom um, putting your money into Bitcoin is a way to preserve your purchasing power, maintain your wealth. But there are billions of people around the world for whom it's a lot more dire. They're not banked. They have no way to save money at all. The little bit of money they make, which is barely enough for them to, get by, although they could potentially save, they just physically have nowhere to put the money. If they're living in a township in South Africa and they go to put it, like, in their little shanty, it's going to get stolen. It's not going to be there. So they literally can't save the money, but they do have mobile phones. And if their money was Bitcoin and they could save that Bitcoin, they might actually be able to pull themselves out of poverty a little bit and improve their quality of life. And there are billions of people, literally billions of people, on the planet for whom Bitcoin really is hope. And, I love that Jack focuses on this aspect a
Yeah.
lot, almost exclusively. And
Paxful, Ray Youssef, also from Paxful exclusively.
yeah,
He's in Africa. I mean, their biggest revenue is Rwanda, Nigeria, money remittances. It's exactly what you talk
yeah,
about.
yeah. And that's, I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm on the investment side. I like making money. There's a paradigm shift where we're switching from one store value to another, and I think we'll outpace inflation and do better than even just
Yeah.
maintaining our purchasing power. But really, the story, for those billions of people, and I think what ultimately might lead to Bitcoin's real success is that aspect. You think about some of your ultra liberal politicians who are always saying how much they champion the rights of the unbanked, underbanked, and underserved part of the population. This is their hope. Like, you printing money to give them a stimulus is not their hope. This is their hope.
Printing stimulus is such a short-term band-aid that not only it doesn't band-aid, it makes things worse in the future. It's like a short-term
Correct.
make it better for a long-term make it so much worse. And the precedent it set was so bad, and
It's
the
a re-
fact that stimulus was done on by a Republican and a Democrat
Well, it's
president
gonna,
is worse.
Charlie. It's going to be done by everybody,
That's the
because
problem.
what stimulus stimulus is a way for government officials to say, "Not on my watch." We're right. It's like it's the kick the can down the road. It does two things, right? For politicians, number one, it says, "Not on my watch." We're not going to bite the bullet and do the hard things with me as president, with me as senator, whatever it is. And the other thing it does is, when you're giving money to the majority of the population, like, politicians are not stupid. They've
Yeah.
realized, like, if you say to people, we're going to give you money, they're going to vote for you. And if you say, I'm going to give you more money than the other guy, they're going to vote for you.
Yeah. 100%. In fact, when I was in university studying economics, I remember my professor explaining this is exactly why Venezuela became a failed state, because a decade or two ago, the president just started, Hugo Chavez just started offering free money to people, free money. And was
Yeah.
saying to myself, wow, that makes so much sense. You offer free money to the lowest of populations. You just create a negative spiral downturn, and it's
Yeah.
the end of a country. And now we're doing it here in America. It just doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
If you rob Peter to pay
Oh,
Paul, you'll always have Paul's support, right?
I know. I mean, but then the opposite side of it was saying that here we were in this coronavirus thing. But at the end of the day, the only reason we needed stimulus is because we shut down the freaking economies. We shut down everything for months and months and months. Even the most
We did.
liberal governors and most liberal presidents shut down for at least 2 months. I mean, that's anyone
Almost
who's driven a
everybody
truck.
capitulated. I admire Sweden.
Yeah, yeah, actually do. In Florida. Love it
In
down there.
Florida.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's funny when you were talking about Florida at the beginning. Yes, there's the monetary aspect and the taxation aspect that's appealing of Florida, but I never thought one of the appeals for me personally of Florida would be my civil rights. But I was just in New York City about a week ago, seeing some friends, hanging out, and just the feeling there, and the contrast between New York and Florida. I go to a restaurant in New York, they won't let me in the restaurant without showing proof of vaccination, then checking my driver's license to make
Yeah.
sure that the proof of vaccination that I'm showing them is in fact me. And then I come to Florida and it's like, I walk into a store, I walk into a restaurant without a mask. It's like, no COVID here.
Don't
It's
you
just,
miss waking
oh,
up
it's
in the
so good.
morning and going to coffee shop in your sweatpants when you're still sleeping. You don't have to think about anything. You can't do that anymore. You got to worry about the mask and getting dry. Everything now, like in Florida, we
You
could do
can
that.
do it here.
Yeah, I was in a grocery store. I was like, it's so early. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I just need milk. And I was like, it's so nice. It's so nice to be
Yeah.
able to just be in Publix and not have to
Can't
worry
do
about
that in New
anything.
York.
No.
You truly can't do that in New York. Like, I mean, but
But
isn't
people,
that
and you
freedom?
ready?
That's freedom.
Our vaccination rates, and this is such a bad metric, you're gonna punch me for using this, but
Yeah.
our vaccination rates in Florida are, if not average, above average to the rest of the country. So how can you say that forcing people to get vaccines are working when Floridians who are actually the rest of the country thinks of us as stupid we're
Yeah.
doing our own research, but because we have the opportunity to. Thank you very much. And I'm vaccinated. I actually got COVID. I still can't smell a year later. It's kind of crazy. I'm
Oh,
going to see a
that
doctor
sucks.
today. No, it's okay. Life is good because there's
Yeah.
so many worse things that could be in life. I sat in prison 5, 6 years ago. So that was
True.
worse.
That was
Life
worse, I
is good, my
imagine.
friend.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you so much for coming on Untold Stories. You have been a pleasure. You told me before the show that you don't do podcasts before, but this is probably one of my best podcasts that I've had all month. Thanks for giving me the
Come
time.
on. Oh, you're so kind.
Dude, you
Thanks
gave
for
me like
having me. I've been a
10
big fan for a long
snippets.
time.
Of course, you're welcome. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. And I'm gonna talk to you about some stuff offline, so I'll talk to you later.